All right, let's start with Tony today. Yes, thank you. Off, please. Unmute.
Sorry. Okay, so my takeaway was in budgets, where you said you need to save costs while planning the budget and not after. Good. You know, there's always this thing to like, okay, let me add up, and then if I save afterwards, like now I understand better how to plan properly. You need to check everything well before you put in the figures per line project. Yes, sir.
Super.
That was
Thank
my
you.
major.
Yes, that's a big one. Thank you so much. Well done. Who's going next? Yes, Michael, let's hear from you.
Yeah, there is one thing I've always run from, and that is budgeting. So now I
run from
facility manager, I have to be proactive in that area. I don't want to criminalize myself because last week I learned that there are some aspects of budgeting that is criminal when we do it. And I say from last week, this facility condition index, we have treated it twice now, which is a cost of deferred maintenance and that of capital revenue. In fact, I take a note. And last time you said there is by 100%, but this last week only, I mean, until Friday's only is not by 100%. Though. How come?
Yeah, a ratio, an index, or a percentage are just the different formats of representing the same thing. So a 1/10 is a ratio.
Okay.
A 0.1 is the same thing as a 1/10. A 10% is the same thing as 0.1 and same thing as 1/10. Whenever you are dividing a numerator by a denominator, you create either a ratio, a percentage, or the third one. So they're all the same thing. So even if you multiply by 100, if you take the ratio or the percentage to multiply to get 100, that's what causes that 100%, right? So 1 is equal to 100%, okay? And anything divided by 1 is a ratio within 1, which is percentage within 100.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Ime?
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, my takeaway was on the financial, understanding the annual report. You know, where you mentioned that as facility managers, we must understand the mission of the organization and tie our financials to that. You know, I will confess that I don't really bother with annual reports for anything. But, you know, with the last class, I now understand that if we don't understand what the organization's mission is, the finances, we would always run into trouble defending what we want to spend and how we want to spend the money, and always have to come back and forth with approvals and things like that. So that was my takeaway from the class.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was excellent.
Yes,
excellent takeaway. Yes, Theophilus.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My takeaway in last lecture was the cost of ownership. That the cost of the ownership starts from the initial, from the designing to the period of a handing over, and not only that, it involves also the ongoing cost of the building. At least when the building has been handed over, the owner still continue in terms of maintenance or facility management is still ongoing. So I really, learned something from that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Theophilus. That was great. Daniel.
Good evening, sir. Hello, can you hear me?
Welcome.
All right.
Yes, your day is good.
My takeaway was actually on budgeting, but then I was to ask a question, but I think probably because of time, you're unable to answer a lot of questions. Please just permit me, everybody in this platform. So I should ask my question so that I'll be able to clarify and justify what I learned on budgeting.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, there is this kind of situation whereby your organization as an FM will be like, okay, go and draft the budget of this particular project that we've seen, that you understand, and due to some kind of circumstances, there was a budget pause. Like, let me use COVID-19 as an example. Like COVID-19 COVID-19 just popped up, and during your budgeting, you've submitted your budget, and they haven't approved your budget, and COVID-19 popped up, and when COVID-19 popped up, the budget needed to stop, and staff resumed again. They approved the project, and do you know that at that particular point there was a kind of economical factors, you understand, that will actually hinder the rate of items, the rate of items, what you need, the things you need to put in place for the project.
All kinds of changes, definitely.
Yes, all kinds of changes. But at that particular point, what would an FM do?
Budget expires. I hope you know that.
Really?
A budget is an annual document. After each year, if you give a budget for 2022 and the budget was not implemented in 2022, in 2023 you cannot apply the same budget. You create a new budget for 2023. So if you want to get something done in pre-COVID times, and because of COVID there was a disruption and it stopped, when you want to kick that off again, you start afresh. You create a new budget for the event, because realities will change on an annual basis. And that's why even when you do CapEx budgets for things you're going to have heavy investments in assets and equipment that will last many years, right? You have your estimates for the gen you are going to replace in 2024 in your CapEx budgets now, right? But you present only the CapEx budget of 2023 for approval. The CapEx budget of 2024, 25, 26, they all stay in your capital replacement plan, which is a long-term plan. It just for management to see and keep seeing that these things will be due in 5, 10, 4, 3 years time, right? So you keep pushing that in. Every year you push that in, you need to revise those amounts. The amount of things, the cost of things you estimate you will spend in 2026, you will revise them now against next year's budget, even though they are not releasing the money for you next year. So in essence, budget is an annually reviewed document. Okay.
Okay.
You know, a document that someone can lock in and say 9 months, 10 months later, you can go and implement what you planned that last year.
Okay, I actually got that. Thank you very much. But the thing is, you know, our Nigeria country, Nigeria, my country, is actually a country whereby you just slip off. They'll just say, okay, plywood of 600 naira is 1,002. You know, there's no price regulation in our country. There's nobody that regulates price. Anybody can just say, okay, this is the price of this thing. Dollars rise, you understand? Hello, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, like dollars rise, and it's not even up to a month. And what can an FM do so that so that an FM will not look like a fool, or probably is extorting the organization?
It's a very valid question. First thing
is, you make a supplementary budget.
Well, supplementary is another way to look at it, but that's not what the word I will use. There are two things. first, in your normal budgeting, you use inflation adjusted rates. So if I were to buy, if I'm planning to buy a generator next year, I ask the price today, and they say it's 10 million. I adjust it by 19%, which is the current inflation rate, right? And then I put probably 12 million or 11.9 million as my budget for the generator next year, even though I have an invoice from the contractor today that I can buy it for 10 million today, but I'm not buying it today, right? So that's the first thing. Take up that in your estimations so that your normal estimates are next year's prices adjusted for inflation as much as possible, right? That's not padding. That's not a criminal offense. Make sure you indicate it in your assumptions. You know that for every line item, you must state your defense for that rate, because somebody may look at your budget for next year and say, hey, I knew the gen code that came in was 10 million. Why are you putting 12.1 million, right? You will say, this is Nigerian Bureau of Statistics website link to the current inflation rates, which is between so and so percentage and so and so. Or you take the average of the last 1 year or last 2 years inflation rates and put it in there if there's been much fluctuation in the inflation. Now that's an assumption, right? And quite honestly, budgets are not supposed to be so precise that there will be no iota of variation. The important thing, you figure out as much as possible all possible variations and put them in your assumptions. Now, the second thing that Abdul was trying to say is what I would call a contingency budget. A contingency budget is after you've done your normal budget, you need to create what we call a risk management plan, where you identify all possible risk. For example, Forex can affect the prices of goods, certain goods in your budget, right? If our currency drops from 500 to 800, for example, what will be the implication on my budget, right? So you put a Forex line item. Then there are certain import-export tariff changes the government does every year. For example, we used to buy vehicles, used vehicles at 30% custom clearing tariff rates. Now we are talking almost 60, 70% for some brands of cars and some age of cars, right? Some building materials that used to come in, plumbing, fittings, and the rest that we need for high-class maintenance for highbrow developments. They are all being affected by importation rates, and the prices will change, right? Policies of subsidies, policies of minimum wage, policies of, imagine if they take up a subsidy today, don't think it's only petrol that is going to be affected. Every price will be affected, right? So you put in a factor in there. That budget is not your normal budget. It's called a contingency budget. You do all your risk analysis and you price every line item of risk, and you have that amount that can affect line items, so and so in your budget, right? So that is a separate budget, so that next year, when things are going to, come escalating and bumping up like that, you need to show management that you have taken thought of it and you have had so and so risk management. So at the end of the day, you not necessarily need to, out of heavy pessimism, pad your budget so heavily. You create that as a contingency budget that you can add as a supplement, just the way Abdul indicated now, right? But the word for it is not necessarily supplementary budget, but contingency budget, which is risk-based. And it's not a rule of thumb. It's not a, let's just estimate that we'll spend extra 15%. Let's just put 15% in one line item. No, you have to figure out what you considered to come up with your risk budget, okay?
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Kingsley.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, welcome.
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't put on my video. I'm having network obstruction. My take home is on opportunity cost of error. in the building life cycle.
Yeah.
With that diagram that shows the stages at which from the design stage down to the procurement stage, from the procurement stage down to the construction stage, those errors that were neglected at the design stage and were not corrected, I learned that at the construction stage, the cost that they would have used to correct it at the initial stage increases at the construction stage. And if it's still neglected at the construction stage, it also grows high again when it reaches the commissioning stage. And when it comes to the commissioning stage down to the operational stage, this is where the margin increases beyond even more than 500% of the initial cost if it was initially. So this in summary shows me that in every building construction or any project, the facility or whoever will be using at the operational stage should be brought in to look at those key points so that those things will be corrected at those initial stage. So what is the opportunity at the long run? Is the cost, the difference in the design stage and that in the operational stage. So that is what brings the opportunity cost of error. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic,
I think that's
fantastic. That's just too sweet. Thank you so much, Kingsley. All right, last comments coming from Theophilus. Question, I guess.
Yes, sir. From the last class has been a burden on me. I just want a clarification on the, maybe it's in time of language, budget, FM, and the bill of quantity. Are they the same, sir?
Bill of quantities are not the same as budget. Bill of quantities is a detailed specification and broken down line items of a particular project. You don't use bill of quantities for your operations. You use bills of quantities for projects, installations, equipment installations, new building renovations, and all of those kind of projects. So by the time you have a budget, your budget would normally carry a line item for that project. So let's say next year we're going to do a street lighting upgrade, right? In budget, street lighting upgrade is just one. But when I want to do that street lighting upgrade next year, I will develop a detailed bill of quantities. I know what's been budgeted. I know when it is scheduled for. I create a project plan and I do a bill of quantities and I bid out the job if I have to bid out, or if I want to do it in-house, I go get materials, get it done. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right, so it's the time when we get into this class. I'm just going to share my screen and get us started. Design, build, commissioning. It was splendid how Kingsley put it. That whole consideration, thinking of what should go into it before we get past design through construction to delivering. For us in facility management, if you get it right in design and building process and getting the commissioning right, facility management is a breeze. Yes. There is no struggle to manage facilities when the construction process is proper. Procedures, process maintained, documentation, properly put in place, then facility management has no issue. In fact, there's not much you will do because the facility will basically just run on autopilot if you get the design building process correctly. So today's lesson will basically all of that consideration for getting us to having operational readiness as the foremost consideration as a formal subjective. When construction teams come together to build, what primarily comes to mind for them is what we call the triple constraints of quality, of cost, schedule, and scope. Now, because of advancements in theory and practice, we no longer have quality as one of the constraints, because schedule has quality, cost has quality. I mean, you know that now from your quality management class, right? And then scope has quality specifications in the scope, okay? Now, our thinking, or what is proper as best practice today, is for facility management to represent the end user in that development cycle, so that instead of just having 3 constraints, we now need to have 4 constraints. And the 4th constraint, which is actually the most important, is called operations readiness. This operational readiness is what we're going to start talking about today. How do we start thinking of operations from the onset? By the time you're planning, before you start designing, when you start constructing, and all the way to handing over, testing, commissioning, handing over, and the process that goes with that. So we're going to look at that whole process. And then handover itself is not what we think it is. It's not a posing for picture in front of the building and exchanging keys or cutting ribbons like we do as handover. Handover is an entire process that involves documentation. You document the entire building, the entire process of building, the entire outcome from that process, and that is what we call handover. It is the process of handing that over. We say we are handing over the facility to the facility manager. You don't need keys as handover tools. You don't need picture poses as or cutting of ribbons. Handover is a clear process of documenting how we built, what we built, and giving someone the tools at his disposal to manage what we have built for the good or the use of the end user. So in essence, we're going to be looking at operational readiness as it applies to every aspect of the building life cycle. Okay, planning, design, construction, testing, commissioning, handover, and facility management. So that entire life cycle is what we're going to look at, and how it affects the users of the building. So this is typically what we experience. There's a stage called the planning stage. In the planning stage, nothing is on ground yet. It's a concept in the mind of an investor, an entrepreneur, an owner, a developer, someone who's got the seed, the vision that needs to be built. And this person comes up with a set of features in his mind. I want it to be a high rise, for example. I want it to be a glass house. I want it to have modern amenities. I want it to have sustainability features, to be green rated. I want it to be able to accommodate 500 people. I want to have so and so type of tenants. It comes up with all kinds of concepts. We call that the brief. The brief is where the owner's intentions, the owner's objectives, the owner's strategic goals for that investment is documented. It identifies the end users, why the end users will need, how we're going to attract the end users, why they will come. It identifies the business ideas of that first person who has the vision. From there, you move on to the design. A design team is made up of architects, engineers, builders, and specialists in every field, from town original planners to geophysical survey guys, to land survey people, to just basically everybody involved in the property industry. At this stage, creating the concept and trying to document what the owner has given them in the brief in 2, 3, 4, 5-dimensional drawing sketches and different form of media and content. What they're basically doing is take that requirement, translate it into a virtual project, a virtual facility. In design, nothing is on ground yet, but everything that will be put on ground will be visualized, communicated clearly to the owner who created the brief, who had the concept, to those who are going to build, and also to those who are going to subscribe to the end users, and so on and so forth. That's what comes inside the design. In this design, you come out with certain outputs. Your input was the brief. What are your outputs? You have a set of design drawings as your outputs. Set of design drawings include architectural, mechanical, structural, and so many. All of the engineering drawings, they're out there. So drawings are there, and then you have bills of quantities. The quantities of yours will develop bill of quantities for the project. This is where you look at the whole building and say, oh, because it's all glazed all around, we've taken the measurements. It's still on paper, it's not built. We know how many square meters of glass. We can tell you that we want 15 millimeter thickness, so and so thermal glass, double glazed for the paneling, and so on and so forth. They can come up with all those quantities and specifications, because this is translating the brief into reality. So the owner gets a sense of what is going to be bought and installed and built, and how much it is going to cost. It is at this point that you now take the design drawings, you take the bill of quantities, and you put them together to create a contract. A construction contract is what you produce as a third outputs from this design stage, and then you go into a bidding, because you want the contractors to see clearly from the drawings and from bills of quantities and the contract terms, payment terms, contract implementation process, and all of that. They see clearly how this project will be built. They can place a bid that makes sense. And then when the winner is gotten, you move into construction. What goes into construction? A contract package that includes the bill of quantities and all of these design drawings. In construction, you start doing another round of drawings. We call these ones construction drawings. So you are trying to have specific work methods, specific jointing, specific instructions implemented in drawings that the actual builders can understand and relate to it. Blow-ups or blowouts to show like a zoom in. We call those details that are made at the construction stage, so that the builders know exactly what they are building. They also consult all of those specifications that are written in the bills of quantities to know exactly what they should buy. They consult the quantities that are there, and they know what kind of cables for electrical, what kind of rods, and all for reinforcements and so on. Everything is clearly laid out, and they're trying to interpret that and implement it into a physical structure. Now, this is where reality hits. Everybody involved in construction, we know that design and construction are not the same thing. By the time you're on the field to implement the construction, you will have all kinds of changes, hiccups, variations hitting you, but not necessarily because that's what happens in every case. But in many cases, it's because of poor planning. So a project plan needs to be developed by the construction team. A project plan, we have all kinds of plans, schedules. We have a cost plan, budget plans for every line item. We'll have employment ad hoc staff, lead times to acquire staff, we have procurement processes, HRO processes, we have communication plans, and all of those processes to deliver on the project. So the project plan is a robust document that helps you, you interpret the drawings, the bill of quantities, the contract, and then you create a proper plan that includes multiple plans integrated into a master plan for the project. You use that to implement the project. During construction, construction drawings, because you'll be making changes or variations, you'll be having things like changes in specifications and quantities. You need to be updating the bills of quantities, because an outcome or an output from the construction process is an as-built bill of quantities, just the way you have an as-built set of drawings, which we call the as-built drawings. They have to come out of this. So every time there's a variation, a change in scope, approved by the owner, approved by the consultants that have been employed, those needs to be documented, right? So at the outputs from construction is the as-built bill of quantities, as-built drawings. It also produces series of licenses and permits, right? The ball has a permit, the elevator has a permit, the fire installations have a permit and approval certificates and so on and so forth. It comes with all of that. It comes with details of the assets register and so many other documentation that were installed. It comes out with operations and maintenance manuals to guide those who are going to install. It comes out with training guidelines on how people will be trained to be able to maintain and operate the facility. So the construction process is a very critical process. Two other things that happens within the construction and after the construction are testing and commissioning. Testing is a process for checking at the delivery points, whether there are errors or whether it is functional, right? So it's a test for functionality. It's a check for whether the item will work or not. It's different from commissioning. Commissioning is a test for adequacy, checking whether the item that is working will meet the requirements of the users. That's commissioning. So it's a different process altogether. So you can test that an air conditioner works in a room. That room is going to serve the purpose of a nightclub. People are going to be dancing there, right? The AC works. All testing parameters passes. But you can only commission it after the number of people designated to dance in that space actually dances. And you observe how they sweat, how many of them faint, how many of them could not dance because of the heat, whether they complained the place was too cold despite their activities and so on and so forth. That's how you check for adequacy, right? So my tested OKAC can fail commissioning if its function is to provide, or its utilities to provide cooling, comfort cooling for 20 dancers who are dancing vigorously and drinking alcohol at the same time, right? So if that is the requirements of the users, 20 people dancing with the normal thing that go with the nightclub activity, right? And then are they having comfort cooling? Are they feeling hot? Are they feeling too cold? That kind of data is what we call commissioning data. So you can test and may not be able to commission at the onset of any new development because you may not have the load capacity to do commissioning. Take power, for example. A building that is built for 400 officials upon setup with a generator that can probably maybe a 200 kV or 100 kVA generator. That generator rated to handle, give me any number, 150 kilowatts. At inception, you may not have 150 kilowatt of load. So it's practically impossible to commission that generator, except you use a load bank. A load bank is a bank of resistance that is applied to the generator, and the generator is made to power it as if it's powering the house. It's rated to the load requirement of the rating of that generator. And if it can handle it without puffing and coughing and going off, or you know, doing too much smoke or becoming too noisy, all of those parameters you're checking for a normal operation of that generator, then you can now say the generator is now, you know, confirmed as commissioned. All of those data of how much smoke came out, how much noise was it within the range, what about the vibration, was it within the range, you know, of normal operations. You take those numbers down, and then you know that the generator is working normally. It meets the load requirements, and it does not shut down while meeting that load requirements. You can now certify that the generator is commissioned. So because commissioning may not necessarily be possible 100% of the time, because you may not have the load requirement, you know, take a stairwell, for example. The stairwell was designed to effectively evacuate 100 people from every floor. Of course, you've done your testing. The testing, structural testing, shows that the resistance of the stairwell is strong enough. The structure is strong enough to hold, you know, 500 people by design, you know, requirements. But then that's testing. For commissioning, you need to have those 500 people actually run or walk through the stairs, and the stairs still stand and nobody gets injured. Nobody complains that it was fainting because of the crowd. Nobody complains. And those are the kind of data you have to, you know, accumulate and record to show that the stairwell, even though it is structurally tested okay, is adequate, commissioned for 500 people, maybe 5 stories and 100 evacuating at every floor. So the whole idea of commissioning is gathering data about adequacy, and that is people focused. It's not necessarily focused on the building anymore. Testing focuses on the building, but commissioning focuses on the users. So that's why we have retro commissioning, which is the commissioning you can do when you do another renovation later in the life cycle of the property, or continuous commissioning, which is the data you keep gathering as the use of the facility increases to meet capacity over time. So you don't have commissioning data at the beginning. You can use continuous commissioning to gather data over the useful life of the assets. At the handover stage, like I said before, you are receiving a set of drawings, set of documents, informations and transcripts of transactions that took place during construction, minutes of meetings, communications, approvals for changes, documentation of those changes, snag lists, you know, so many things that needs to be done and handed over to you. We're going to be looking at quite a bunch of these in today's class, right? So these are the things that come to you as handover. And many FMs probably didn't know that asset register is supposed to come to you upon handover. That your as-built drawings is supposed to be given to you upon handover. Handover is document handing over. A set of documents that helps you understand how the property was developed from onset to where it is right now. That's the entire process of building it. Includes all that has been built into it, asset data, and includes how to run and operate it or maintain it. That's your operations and maintenance data, as well as licenses, permits, and documentation that gives you the rights, including CFO, for example, to occupy that building and make it useful for people. It's after you've gotten the handover, you get into facility management, where you now come in to create maintenance and operations processes. You have all of those warranty to monitor. They all came from handover. You have people's service level agreement to make, contract to provide services, and so on and so forth. And that goes back into that cycle, because every facility will get to a point where you need to consider, is this still useful? Is it still necessary for us to keep this facility as it is, even though we're maintaining it very well? It ends at some point, and you need to ask whether that facility is still needed as it is for the purpose it was built, needed as it is for another purpose, or not needed again, or the purpose is still in existence, but the facility is no longer required and needs to be replaced with something virtual. In all, another round of planning starts, and you are back to that cycle again. So that's the cycle of development. Our discussion is based on us focusing on having operational readiness in place through this entire cycle, so that we don't end up thinking of the end user at the end, because that's what normally happens. So the project is conceived, built, and at the end of the entire project, where are the end users? Who represents them? That's when we call them in to start taking over. At that time, many of the decisions we have taken for, systems installations, building methods, material choices, design considerations, might have ignored them all up until that time. That's why you will find serious investment in high rises where there are no places to keep cleaning materials on every floor, or there are, but there's no place for the cleaners to sit down on the floor. You don't have a place for a coffee room or tea break in every floor. You don't have, so many things are missing. You don't have cloakrooms in the entire compound or the entire building, changing room showers for workers who are going to run 24 hours. You don't have considerations for water pressures at certain floors in the building. You hope that gravity will run it all the way back to the 11th floor. Many considerations were not put in place because the people designing and building did not have a prior experience of what the use of that facility will be when it is being used. So for you as a facility manager, being that kind of environment, you are able to get connected with the end users. You are presenting the end users, you have their experience, you have been managing them in your career, and you can bring that in, but you can't just bring it in and get crashed into the program, into the construction. Most owners and developers and company executives, we see you as a bottleneck, as an hindrance to the speedy delivery of the process if all you do is just try to drag everybody's hands down to make them do the right thing, right? So they don't see it at the right thing at that point. What you need to advocate for is that we should have an operational readiness program. An operational readiness program is a seamless system for seamless transfer of a building from construction into full operation in a structured manner to an agreed program. What this simply means is, let's have at every stage of planning and execution of this project, the end user's consideration in mind. And so we'll bring in, anytime there's going to be a change review, the FM must be part of the change review to represent the end users. Anytime there's going to be of all forms of documentation that's going to come from construction to the FM needs to be specified by the FM at the onset to say, if you are giving me the asset register, this information and that information should be in the asset register that you are giving to me, right? Because that's the information that will help me manage the facility. If you are giving me an operation and maintenance manual, it should include what you have built in there, how I should maintain it, because you are the ones that are building it in there, and so on and so forth. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about in an operational readiness program. So you get it developed jointly with the construction people so that they accept and they know and expect that certain things will be done in the way you specify. They agree to it upfront, not during project delivery. You start popping up with all kinds of forms and templates, and the contractors and the consultants will see you as a nuisance. And once they see you as a nuisance, they get the owner of the project to see the implication of you continually disturbing their project. The owner will be the first person to kick you out because he will want the project to be executed quickly, swiftly, and at cheapest cost, right? But your job is to proactively call for an operational readiness program that is multidisciplinary, that involves all the players in the team, to ensure that we sit down and agree the way we are going to roll out the project with a full consideration of the end user. That's the whole idea, so that there'll be no issues. Traditionally, people build, the traditional model where it's more like waterfall. You design, you say, I'm done with design. Here's your design, go and build. We've built, here's your building, get guys to come and commission it, and then get the FM guys at the end to come and operate it. But that's not what we are advocating for. What we are advocating for now is that there should be multiple teams involved in every stage. instead of the design team just finish their design and dump it and go, they are involved in other stages, giving inputs. Instead of the construction team just come and build, they are involved in the design, they're involved in construction, and the FM is at the end to take over. The FM is not going to show up just at the end, take over blindly what's been developed. No, the FM needs to have certain inputs at every stage of the development process up until the end when it takes over. And when it even takes over, there are other stakeholders in the construction and delivery process that need to stay on ground at least for an interim period before the FM is fully and have full understanding of what it's doing in the project, in the facility management process that is taking over. So we're going to be talking about what the FM contributes to each of these phases after we come back from our 5-minute break. Okay, so just make a note, say it in the chat that we're on the break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay.
All right, sir.
All right, welcome back.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Yes, so we'll start with the planning stage. When we say the FM, the end user should be represented. If you get an FM consultant or an FM manager on the project, start talking from the onset, their involvement in the project, and they don't have any value they are adding, they will just be a nuisance to that project team. And that's what we want to avoid, that we do not become nuisance to the project team. We don't become people who are clogs on the path of progress for the project. We are not going in to become the experts in construction. We don't have a clue how to build, right? We're not going to tell the engineers and the designers their jobs. That's not our role. Our role there is to ask questions, innocent questions that reflect what our fears and concern will be if we were taking over the facility or we're handling the project or the owners were using it. So when they are doing the design for the plumbing systems, you're asking questions. How can we prevent smell from falling back into the bathrooms, right? How can we prevent smell? And hey, they'll be telling you, you guys will be exchanging ideas on how to ensure that the piping does not result in smelling bathrooms, right? How can we reduce the incidence of blockage? These are the things that you're coming with your experience in plumbing. Blockage, things filling up and blocking the system. Is there a way we can prevent that? Questions around angles of piping joints, we'll discuss the risk of small pipes being used for drainages and so on, as will be discussed. It is during that process you are adding value. You are bringing the user experience into the delivery process. It's always missing because of those triple bottom line considerations that exclude operational readiness. At the planning stage, what's your input? Oh, the planner is the driver. Who is the planner? The planner is basically the owner and his immediate in-house team. He needs to have input from somebody from construction, input from the FM, right? Because if you're going to build something, you need to know that it's buildable. And the FM are the ones who have experienced the user. So your concept is about a certain public, a certain demographic, a certain group of people. Oh, I live around the campus and there's this nice plot of land here. We want to invest in a hostel, right? We need to understand how the hostels are faring, what kind of demand they are getting. Are there demand for more male, more female? Are there demand for mixed hostels? Those ones are done during the planning stage. What size of hostel can we build that will actually sell out, right? Or are we going to have vacancies? Are there already vacancies right now? And so on. You do all that in the planning stage. At the end of the planning stage, you come up with, this is the ideal project. This is the ideal structure I'm going to build. The FM's input there will help determine information that goes into demographics, planning for more male, more female, for example, planning for toilet numbers. You're not yet in design, but providing spaces for accommodation and other conveniences and so on and so forth. You know, drinking water, the welfare, the health and safety considerations that need to be built into the project. They are all done at the planning stage. At the design stage, you're translating that into design like we discussed before. And the FM's input here is simple things like maintainability. Maintainability can be around access. If you run this line through here, run this pipe through there, if there are blockages, how do we assess it? Where are we going to have inspection chambers and manholes and so on? Okay. The FM is also looking at functionality of certain installations. You know, if you run a split unit AC across 3 floors, the outdoor unit is down here and the indoor unit is the 3rd floor. That long pipe that will take the gas into that 3rd floor. Would that place still receive cooling? What kind of sizing do you need to have of a compressor down here to be able to throw cooling that far and so on? So the FM is looking at that. You're looking at sustainability. For example, energy efficiency. If we use this 3mm, 2mm glass windows, how is that going to affect our cooling energy consumption? If we pave the whole places and there are no plants, there are no trees, how are we going to moderate environmental impact of this facility? Those are the things you are bringing on board: maintainability issues, sustainability issues, health and safety considerations, you know, even operational that. And those considerations are basically summarized in this in five considerations in design: sustainability, maintainability, operational exigencies and flow, building users experience. So people who are using a certain space, how are they going to be able to get drinking water? Where's the nearest toilet? How big is this space supposed to be to accommodate the number of people we're expecting? What's going to be space requirements for each of those spaces? Who are the groups, the various groups we need to identify to provide spaces for? All of those are done in designing. During construction, the FM's input is basically, because during designing, you have asked the right questions, you've gotten the right spaces, the right services, the right questions about maintainability, the access, the chambers, the ventilation for shaft and cores, the noise level at certain points, the impact of certain emissions on people in different areas. You take care of all of those during design. So design is now looking good enough for your end users. Operational readiness is built to the design. During construction, you now need to be conscious of 2 key things. One is changes or variations that are taking place during construction. Virtually everything that has been designed will be tested, challenged during construction. Obstacles will be thrown up, and the project team will aim to still deliver as quickly as possible. And so they'll be making a lot of decisions as the project moves on. As the FM, ensure that first there is a change management process that is robust, built into the contract, so that people cannot just at the whim of an electrician not feeling like running cables for long distance, decide to take a new shortcut under a floor will not just do it because it feels like, right? A robust change management system built into the contract will ensure that certain people review so you must give enough reason for that change request. It's reviewed by certain people, approvals are multiple, right? So even the flimsy changes that throw themselves into projects, people will be more careful because they know that before I finish all this write-up and justification for this, I might even just go ahead and get the right thing done, and so on and so forth. So a lot of that change management process built in is something that you need to watch out for, so that during the construction itself, change is is carefully managed. Now, with that comes the documentation of what is being done, including documentation of the changes, so that whenever a change that goes through the right process is implemented, it is also documented that this is what it is now. So the as-built bill of quantities and as-built drawings we talked about are beginning to be developed because you are documenting changes. Then in the construction phase, you have the quality assurance and quality control processes. These two processes are combined in what comes out as the output of our testing and commissioning we'll be talking about in the next phase. The quality assurance and quality control, quality assurance, it's a process of getting things done, documenting, and reviewing to get approvals to get things done, to ensure that the right things are done in the process to the endpoints. So if you are building a septic tank, for example, taking the right angles of the formwork using survey tools, right? And checking that the formwork is really square and in their position before you cast or pour the concrete into it, or before you even do you bend the iron to do the reinforcement in it. It's a quality assurance process to ensure that the formwork is perfect, it is certified, the reinforcement is seen, is confirmed, is validated, approved, certified before you get the mix. The mix is also checked to be sure that the mix is appropriate, properly mixed and then poured, and then the curing period is counted to be sure that it cures for the number of days it should cure before you take out the formwork and so on. Those things you are doing as the documentation of the processes to ensure the right things are done are called quality assurance activities. What you do at the end of the septic tank delivery, where you come in to check to see the features, is there handles for the cover, are there vents, are the piping in the right places, is it properly sealed in the place where it should be sealed, is the concrete tested for structure to be sure that it can carry the load of the parking lot that's going to be on top of this slab, and so on and so forth. Is it checked for moisture intake or soak away when it's not supposed to be soaking away, and stuff like that. Those are tests you do at the end. Those tests are called quality control activities. So quality assurance are the steps you put in place to control the processes for the delivery to prevent error from being available or made in the outcome. Quality control are the measures you put in place to examine the outcome to see if they are qualified as specified originally, okay? If quality assurance is done very well, quality control will pick up nothing, because quality assurance includes stopping to fix problems before a problem is translated into outputs. Now, so in construction phase, you want to be sure that change management is in place. You want to be sure that quality control, quality assurance process are in place. You want to be sure that documentation of variations and changes and exactly what is being built is being done, and ensure that all the right licenses and permits are being obtained as the work goes on. Those are things you are just paying attention to, because those are things that are going to haunt you for the rest of the useful life of that property if they are not done right in construction. These are the points where you actually do walk around, maybe walking around, just to observe the work that is being done to be sure that nobody's trying to quickly cover something up that's not done right. Okay, and then you move to the testing phase. Your job in the testing phase, you're not the expert in testing. You're just going to ask the engineers and designers to provide for you the testing templates. There are templates that shows the normal parameters for everything they are going to build. If they're going to build a concrete slab, there's a normal parameter for the concrete slab in terms of how much resistance, the structural strength, the density, the weight. You know, they have all of those measures, right? They've written them down in a template. You get that template, just like a lab test. When they are going to do a lab test for you, you already should know what normal range, you know, should be for whatever line item they are testing, so that when the test result comes out, you already know whether you fall into the normal range or you fall out of the normal range. So without that testing set of documentation, there's nothing like testing. All of those come around, let's go around. You see some of these foreigners and Nigerian engineers just walking around the site and pointing things to you and pointing things to you and telling you you're doing testing, you're on and offing things. Those are not testing. Testing is documentation. And then commissioning, we've talked a lot already, is you, facility management, that is at the center of commissioning. Because commissioning is no longer about the building and what's built, it's about the people who are using the building. You are the one actually supposed to be documenting the user experience, starting from the post-construction survey, post-occupancy survey that you conduct, and the survey observation on how people are using facilities, things that are working fine and people are feeling satisfied about it, and the ones they are not satisfied about, and the inadequacies of those. So commissioning is really, really heavily dependent on us as facility managers. And then handover. We're going to look at some of the documentation that gets to come to us at every of these phases in development process. But what I'm just trying to go through in the chunk of this whole lesson is how to think, how to participate, how to be valuable in every stage, because you're not going to get crashing through this process of construction. You're not going to get recognized just because you're a facility manager. Nobody wants you as a distraction. You have to earn your place by carefully documenting your experience with your existing facilities, learning from those experiences, so that when you are on a project, you can contribute meaningfully to the things that the engineers should be considering. Because most of those engineers and designers, they have designed and been very experienced, they've gone all over the world, but they have not followed their construction, experienced it, lived with it for 50 years, for 30 years. So they don't even know half as much of what you know about the experience of the end users. If they know, they'll be happy to adjust their ways and get a better experience for the end users. So at the design stage, much of what we've talked about, reviewing the owner's requirements to ensure that it's captured in design and construction documentation, ensure that quality assurance, quality control systems are put in place, contract documents capture everything. And this is something that many times we miss. When contract documents come out, we just assume that the as-built drawings is automatic. Contractor will provide it for us. No, you have to provide a line item to capture the costs of developing the as-built drawing, because as-built drawing is not just to remove the label and adjust the drawing. It's a measured drawing. You have to go back on that site after building and do measurements to get as-built drawings. So it takes effort, right? All those test procedures captured at the beginning stage, so you don't wait at that end to start saying, what are we testing, what are we trying to commission? At the construction stage, you're basically ensuring that all of the quality assurance activities are implemented. You attend site visits. You know, see, something about the construction stage for facility managers is, initially when you're in your first project and you're trying to observe how these consultants and contractors and architects and all work together, you see a lot of pally-pally. Why? There's a strong sense of fraternity because they are all tied to the same set of milestones for payments. The owner pays the contractor and pays the consultant who certify that the contractor is good for being paid now, right? At the same time, a percentage. So what happens is a consultant will be shooting himself in the feet by not certifying the payment for a contractor, even if the contractor has not done it or done crap. So in essence, there's complicity in that whole certification process. The FM is supposed to stand in and represent the owner. If the FM is not intelligent or not experienced or not able to have valuable contribution or not able to generate the kind of data that can convince the owner that there are real dangers or risk of not doing some of these things you are suggesting now as against later in FM, then the owner might also become complicit in the poor delivery. He may just focus strictly on get it done quickly. Let's do a housewarming, because really, how many of us live in the buildings that we build? When you're a businessman, you build, you're selling, you're renting, you're not going to live in all of those buildings. Very small percentage you're going to live in, right? So operational readiness will not be your focus, even as the owner, because you really feel, let's get it done quickly, let's sell and make money. So you need to have a very strategic approach to the owners of developments that you work for. So as you are representing them on the project team, representing the building users, you're also representing your own profession and the value you're going to give to that owner over time. And then post-construction, all of those FM services, scoping, service level agreements, warranty, protection, all the other occupant services after construction has been done, catering, refuse, and the rest, they all come in at that stage. If you're moved into a facility that is not newly constructed, you also have a set of documentation you need to seek from the previous managers. If you don't get it from them, you need to reverse engineer the process. So even before we get into this talk of documents coming from construction, we also have documents that should be in place when we take over properties. Now, I know many people come at me with this and say, oh, well, I took over and nobody gave me vendor contracts, nobody gave me a list of vendors, nobody gave me utility bills, no financial data. They didn't give me equipment list, no asset register, maintenance records that were missing, nothing was there. There was nothing. I just came and started on a fresh start. If you work for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, will you have all these things in place? That's the question you need to ask yourself. If you really meet it, will you work to have them in place? Because if you don't have them in place, the next FM will come and complain that you did a crappy job. Having this in place becomes a goal for you for whatever facility you are managing. What permits are in place? What maintenance records have been kept? What financial data, utility bills? Many times we want to do energy efficiency for you and we'll say, look, bring your energy consumption data for the last 1 year. Let's review your bills and your diesel consumption and all that. And people are struggling. They basically just pay the bill and there's no proper documentation of once it's approved and paid, that's it. You just move on. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years later, we don't have. There's no way you can make intelligent business decisions, advice management on anything if you cannot keep proper records of what you're managing. So the process is something that you do to reduce challenges at handover. Consultants and contractors are happy to dump on you cartons of CDs, warehouses of paper documents in different disjointed formats. If you don't work with them from the beginning to say, this is the format we want things. We want these maintenance logs in spreadsheets. We want those in AutoCAD format drawings. We want, I know you have your numbering structure or labeling structure. We just need to understand how those filing is going to be done so that we have all the information we need. So there are 3 key sets of documentation in standard environment: operational maintenance program, testing and commissioning program, handover program. We're going to look at each of the 3 of them in terms of the standard documents you should require, but I'm going to highlight a few of them that I feel are critical, that even if you don't have, anything, some of those documents are key to your managing the facility. And why we are talking about this is your focus on operational readiness, documentations, and all of these considerations we are looking at in this class will give you a substantial cost reduction in your operations and maintenance. And to think that your operations and maintenance is a huge aspect of the overall life cycle cost, it's in everybody's interest to do whatever will give you that life cycle savings, because it gets worse as the years go by. So whether it's a new building, whether it's an old building you are taking over, the startup information requirement extends to the business that you are managing, right? So you need to understand key issues around the organization you are managing for, how your facility management contributes to the value. So I call this your basics, business requirement, whether the business drivers, the needs, constraints, planned business changes, just everything that we discussed in the strategic facility planning class. Tie it back here and use that to extract the kind of information that will give you a basis to say you are professionally providing facility services to that organization. All right, so now from our discussion, you can easily answer a simple question. You know, when do you launch operational readiness program? It is early in the design. In most cases, it must be brought up as part of planning consideration that when we go into design, we are going to have an operational readiness program in place. It must be a decision that is agreed to by the owner. So at construction, it's already too late because it will only be a distraction to the project plan at that time. So it actually has to come out as an objective from planning that when you are doing design, it's incorporated into the project design. All right, so the operational and maintenance program, you need to have the schedule of assets, which we call the asset register, and then you need to have the operating manuals. The operating manuals, it's not just the manuals that come with an asset. You know, you buy an AC and there's a manual that's inside the carton of the AC. That's not the operating manual. That manual is actually a chapter in your operations and maintenance manual for that AC, because the manufacturer does not know how you are going to lay your drain pipes, does not know how you're going to position the outdoor relative to the indoor. It gives you latitude to do that. You need to document what you have done in the construction of the installation of that equipment. It does not know how far your circuit is going to be to power it. You know, you can have a socket close by, but that socket comes from a DB or consumer unit, right? And there's a fuse rating there. All of that detail needs to be documented for that one AC to have your complete operations and maintenance manual. And that includes how you maintain the AC. But we're even lucky with the ones that comes with a manual for the MEP assets. What about civil assets like floor tiling and wall finishing and cladding and the rest, and glazing that they just buy and install? They need to develop an asset operations and maintenance manual for glazing, the glass that you have installed in your windows and installed in your curtain wall, to show what kind of material it is, the dimensions, how many millimeter, you know, what tensile strength, what thermal resistivity or strength it has, you know, crash resistance and all those information, including how to clean it in case it cracks, how to fix, you know, and so on and so forth. The frames, how they are built. You need to have a detailed operational maintenance manual for glass. You need to have another detailed maintenance, operational maintenance manual for tiles. You need to have it for all the woodwork. You need to have it for all the finishing on the wall and so on and so forth. It's carefully, you know, itemized and given to you. If an operations readiness program is put in place, the contractors, the designers, they see these requirements upfront. They know that they have to price for it. And they know that someone in the operations team representing the owner and the end users is going to ask for it. In fact, follow up to ensure that this information is provided, right? So manufacturers' contact information in case of warranty follow-ups later, and replacements and repairs after sales service, which of course they would have left you to your fate if you don't have that information. Safety procedures needs to be documented. Index of drawings and plans, you know, maintenance schedule. You can imagine your maintenance schedule is really not for you to produce. It's supposed to come from them. And it's an extract from the operating manuals, because the operations and maintenance, they come together. It tells you how to use them and how to maintain everything that is built. And then you need to have tested equipment and tools. You need to have specifications, interfaces, parts lists, recommended spare parts. So you see something installed in your facility, you should know what kind of parts are built in, components built into it, which ones are replaceable, consumable inside it, and which ones are the ones that should you expect to last through the useful life of that asset. And then we also have the testing and commissioning manual that includes another set of documents. I'll tell you the ones that have not been picked here. The key one here are the as-built drawings and the bills of quantities. We are talking of as-built bills of quantities. It's also important to have snag lists. When they do all those inspections at handing over quality control activities, they document snags, and then they have a project tracking system for fixing those snags through the defect liability period. You should have that document, because if you are going to meet problems later, there are certain symptoms and how those symptoms were covered and resolved during construction handover that will give you a hint as to what kind of problems you're going to meet later. And then a GIS coordinates identifying where everything is located within the site. Of course, it's a nice to have. If you can't have that, no problem. But at least get the vendor details who worked on the project, not just the manufacturers now that we saw in the last one, the vendors, the contractors who represented those manufacturers who were on site delivering the items. Guarantees and warranties, they have conditions for every warranty, so you don't end up voiding your warranty yourself, because that happens a lot where you don't know there was a warranty and there are certain conditions for that warranty to be implemented. Less than 1 year down the line, your warranty is not expired. You find an issue with it and you go jumping into certain activity that can void your warranties. So you need to understand that. And then manufacturer recommendations, if there are unique recommendations, legal documentations come in here. Design modifications information, for example, if you need to expand certain spaces, information on how the beams and columns interrelate, so you know which ones that cannot be touched. Ladies and gentlemen, construction people don't have the time to give you all of this, but you should ensure that you have as-built drawings, as-built bills of quantities, and at least your warranty documentation as a minimum from this bunch. And then we look at the handover manual, which is the final chapter of the O&M operations readiness program. And this is where you look at regulatory documentations, because this is handover, how people are trained. There's also provide training manual, presentation slides, practical training for your workers who are going to take over. That whole process of when we finish building, talk to the builder to leave some of his workers to help us in the maintenance is a scam. It's not standard practice. It's not something we should even encourage. If we are going to employ somebody into operations and maintenance in facility management, the person should be trained to become a facility manager or maintenance staff in maintenance, not in it's a different psychology, different philosophy, building, installing versus maintaining. And because now we are now involving people, there's a relationship side, soft skills required, right? So if we're going to employ, let's be neutral on who to employ. But the training records, the training data, the training materials need to come from construction team. Okay, all of the information on the test results, commissioning data needs to also be produced at this stage. All right, so this is not something that you will be able to just pop in and deliver on in your organization overnight. It takes time, it takes deliberate effort to document your experiences as you mature, to gather data, to make business cases, to ask the right questions, to get people in the project to be able to listen to you. Okay, so let's have your questions. That's our class for today. there's an assessment, please do it as quickly as possible. I believe the concerns about the portal for submission has been resolved by now. So please, if you still have an issue, let the training department know. But all assessments are due immediately after, at least before the next class. Okay. All right. So let's see who has a question. Allow you. You want to start? Go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul.
You're welcome.
You have said so much, and in fact, I don't know where I stand again. Now, you see, there are so many things that, especially in many buildings, I'm not really sure that the building owners, they will actually think of assigning an FM a role in the course of, before even while they are preparing for the building. So, because some of them, I feel, especially the professionals, they will feel that by the time you are asking them this question, they might feel, okay, don't we know what we are doing? Or you want to teach us our job. So that's some of the challenges I feel that an FM person will see, especially when you are coming into, starting with them at the setting up stage of this project.
Okay.
We have seen some situations, especially where I work, like some machines or some equipment will just be brought in. We are the one that will be working, that will be involved in the maintenance of all those equipment later. But we are not, we don't even have the knowledge of installation, where the machine was bought from. And sometimes you also discover that there are manufacturer errors. But many people believe that the why don't make mistakes. So those are some of the things I feel that it might really be the challenge of when you talk about this design, the involving an FM right from the starting point of the project.
Okay, that's a good point. The truth is, you have to make a business case. Do we have a need for operational readiness? The answer is yes. Can we convince the critical stakeholders to accept operational readiness? That is a critical question. How can we make them accept this need for operational readiness? And that's why I summarize by saying, you as the person who has been experiencing user difficulties, you are the person who have been experiencing operational difficulties. You are the ones that have been struggling with maintenance issues like the one you just mentioned. You are the one that has experienced defects that you can't explain. You are the one that have experienced costs spiraling out of control because of design and construction issues. Documenting these experiences, gathering data on what the best practice could have been compared to the negative experiences you are having, will do a lot of good. Take, for example, somebody who has air conditioners pasted around the high-rise outdoor units, and you have to use cranes or scaffolds to get to them once in a blue moon to do servicing, right? You know what those costs are, you know what those inconveniences are, you know what the risks are, document them. You know what the ideal situation could have been. Project that. Let's assume I do air conditioning servicing 4 times a year at a cost of 20,000 naira per 1.5 horsepower air conditioner. That's 20,000 a year, right? Project that 20,000 a year over 30, 40 years of maintaining ACs in that building. I have my costs. But now the air conditioner is pasted on the 7th floor outside, and it takes me a 90,000 naira scaffold to get to it. So first, I service it less often. I can't service it 4 times a year anymore. I probably just pretend to be servicing it, right? Because I can't get that scaffold. So I even lower the maintenance of that AC and do it once or twice a year. Even at that, 90,000 times 2 is 180, plus the 5,000 I used to service it. That's 190,000. Compare 190,000 to 20,000, and project it over 30, 40 years, so that, and I multiply by the number of ACs that have been affected by that wrong or poor decision. By the time I finish doing that, and I'm asking a question, if we were to create a ledge, a landing, where outdoor units can be stacked on every floor, and a service access to that point where those ACs will be accessed from every floor and maintained, how much will that extra concrete and door access cost, right? This is the number. But the difference between a 20K per year times maybe 500 ACs in that building times a 190 per year times that 500 ACs in that building for 30, 40 years, it's not even comparable, but I'll do the numbers, right? So by the time I'm going to talk, I'm not coming there to say, I feel like it will not be nice to have ACs without a service shaft or a service access, right? I'm not going to say that. I'll say, is it possible for us to have a service access, a ledge or a slab where maintenance crews can work at every level safely on these ACs? Oh, well, it's going to affect the aesthetics, it's going to affect the cost and blah, blah, blah. But look at the implication on operations and maintenance. For me, who is going to do the maintenance? For the owner, who is going to pay for this maintenance cost? For the users who are going to suffer ACs not being serviced for months or years, even, because sometimes you may not even summon the courage to and the cost to roll out those projects. So the ACs may not be serviced for years, right? So who is it going to affect? It's a case that needs to be made with a lot of strategy, but data. It has to make sense. It has to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, forget it. Nobody's going to listen to you. So if we find ourselves in situations where a project is upcoming and we are finding it difficult to make that case, it's important that we recommend to management that among all the consultants you are getting, let's also get a facility management consultant to work with them, right? I work in several projects where I'm not the mechanical engineer, I'm not the electrical engineer, I'm not the civil engineer, I'm not the structural engineer, I'm not the plumbing engineer, I'm not, those, I'm the FM engineer, FM consultant. On that project, on all of these specialist areas, just because I represent the users, the owners, and the operators of the facility, with those considerations, maintainability and access issues, maintenance spares issues, just maintainability alone, I can give you 2 pages of write-ups on things that I will correct on every aspect. And then sustainability. Sustainability has to do with environmental impact, people impact, the waste generated, energy consumed over the years as that is going to be used. I can give you a whole page of outline that I'm going to be looking out for. That's because of my experience. So when I get into that project, it's the first thing is, what kind of business case did I make to be able to get in? The fact that I'm going to be there representing all of this, I'm going to be focusing on ABC with many of the things I've taught you in this class, especially those slides where I say the FM contribution during design, construction, and FM stage, for example. Those 3 or 4 slides, look at them and see the kind of line items you can use to build that business case. So it may not be you, it may be a consultant that you may get the approval to get appointed as part of the consulting team. And that makes your life easier, because at the end of the day, operational readiness is what you really want to achieve.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bamidele.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for your lectures. I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot from this topic. And it has really it has exposed me to know a lot of things in some areas better than I know it before. I was privileged to work in a project, and we started from the foundation, and I was more like the owner's client representative at that project. And while we were at the planning stage, designing and the construction stage. We have a lot of interference, and the owners have to interfere so much in the construction stage, whereby the architectural design had to be changed a bit to the structural design. And at the end of this project, at the point of commissioning and testing and commissioning, that was when he invited my other colleagues in the facility team into the project, that we had to manage this project. And one of the challenges we faced with the users of this project was that, there was a lot of things that was changed as a result of the design. And, the designing stage, due to the influence of the owner, it's really affected a lot of things. Even with the users are complaining of some things now, that these are not ought to be like this. And, how can we're looking on how to manage those challenges we have on ground now.
Yeah.
And one of the issue again is that at the points of testing and commissioning, the defect liability period for most of the contractors, after we finish the project, after the commissioning, most of the contractors left the project.
Of course.
In which they were supposed to have a period of time, for their defect liability. But, it was a big challenge for us to really work on that project. And I believe you understand where I'm coming from.
The story of every project. It's the story of every project. The contractors will not stay during defect liability period. They will leave. If you find anything during that 6 months, call them to come and fix it. But that's
we call them.
That's if you have their money.
Handed over.
No, that's because you didn't have their money. If you don't have a percentage of their money in your hand, they will not answer you again. That's straightforward.
Wow.
They are gone. You understand? So some of these things are the things that you in the project, your job is to make a list of things you will pay attention to. You understand? So that even when the owner, who will not live there, is coming with those changes, you have to have the relationship to do some critical analysis to show him the impact of some of those changes. People make a change that will save so much in concrete, and they think it's a savings. They make a change that will save so much in one material or the other, or to reduce the number of pumps or the size of the pump to a certain size that will be cheaper, right? They can do all those changes, but you need to discuss the implication. That's what the FM's job is. So and then you were not operating as an FM, so it wasn't, you were not even in the project. You're just an owner's rep, mostly monitoring the commercial implications and monitoring that there's no loss of revenue, right?
Yes, sir.
Because if you were there as an FM, your mindset would have been different. You would have been able to use some of these ideas we talked about. And many FMs, I don't say blame you. Many FMs have not gone through this kind of training. They don't have this kind of exposure. So they are in the team, but they don't know what to look out for. They're going to just be doing yes sir throughout the delivery, and they will end up with a problem that when it was being built, they were there and they did not know that it was going to be a problem. And that's where it's a bit dicey. So if you're not very experienced, let your business case be about getting a consultant in who has an FM background. Okay.
Thank you, sir. But quickly, sir, the snag list, is it the responsibility of an FM to do the snag lists?
No.
To check through maybe during testing, commissioning?
During that period, the snag list is produced by the construction team. But the FM who is going to take over is the one pointing out things for them to put on that snag list. And is the one going to monitor the tracking of rectification of those snags. It's like your first FM task on the project.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, that's been our lesson. Thank you, everybody. I hope you've had a good time. I expect you to please do your assessments now and turn them in, and see you again on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and bye, sir.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Bye.